why the FBI has not released a profile on who is responsible for Nancy Guthrie's kidnapping.
A single car, parked at an auto mechanic's garage, still in police custody, more than 2 months after an 84-year-old woman vanished in the dead of night. That car belongs to the son-in-law of one of America's most recognized journalists, Savannah Guthrie of NBC's Today Show. The family has been publicly cleared. The investigation has produced 0 arrests. And yet, that car has not been returned. Not because of a paperwork delay, not because of a scheduling issue, because investigators are still going through it. And here is what nobody has fully connected yet: 3 specific timestamps buried in the data from that vehicle. 3 moments that fall on weekends. 3 moments that all fall in the days before Nancy Guthrie disappeared. And when you line them up against what we now know about how this abduction unfolded, the picture that emerges is not what most people are expecting. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand why this car is not just evidence. It may be the single most important boundary line in this entire case. Please, before I continue, kindly like, share, and subscribe for more updates. Let's start from the beginning, because if you're just finding this case, you need to understand what we're dealing with. On February 1st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie, an 84-year-old woman and the mother of NBC Today co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, was reported missing from her home in the Catalina Foothills, a suburb of Tucson, Arizona. Evidence recovered at the residence indicated she had been taken against her will, and Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos stated he believed she had been abducted. She was reported missing on February 1st when she didn't show up to watch an online church service at a friend's house. A routine Sunday morning. A familiar routine for a sharp, independent woman in her 80s. Gone. Nancy Guthrie was last seen around 9:45 p.m. on January 31st when family members dropped her off at her home in the Catalina Foothills north of Tucson following dinner. That drive home, just 10 minutes, would become the last confirmed sighting of her before everything went dark. What happened in the hours that followed is both documented and deeply disturbing. Her doorbell camera disconnected at 1:47 on February 1st. Her pacemaker stopped syncing with her iPhone less than an hour later. 2 devices, 2 timestamps, and then silence. Here is what the official timeline tells us. According to a timeline provided by the Pima County Sheriff's Department, Nancy arrived at her daughter Annie's home at 5:32 p.m. on the evening of January 31st, 2026. She dined there and was dropped off at her own home after dinner at around 9:48 p.m. She was dropped off by her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni. Police say Cioni waited until Nancy was inside before driving off. The garage door closed at 9:50 p.m., at which point authorities believe she was home and heading to bed. That is the last confirmed moment. Garage door closes. Car drives away. And from 9:50 p.m. onward, the timeline becomes a gap. A gap that, to this day, remains unexplained. Savannah Guthrie said in an interview that the back doors of her mother's house were found propped open. Not broken down. Not smashed. Open. Which raises its own set of questions. And then there was the surveillance footage. 10 days later, on February 11th, investigators released video footage from a camera on Guthrie's front porch, showing a man wearing a mask, gloves, and a backpack, along with what appeared to be a gun holster. Investigators reported that the intruder attempted to tamper with the video doorbell by attempting to knock off, and when unable to, subsequently covered the lens with foliage from a potted plant. Someone who came prepared. Someone who knew there were cameras. Someone who had a plan for every obstacle. And that detail is critical because it is exactly where the car comes back into this story. Now, let's talk about the vehicle that has become one of the most scrutinized pieces of evidence in this entire investigation. The blue Honda CR-V associated with Nancy's daughter, Annie Guthrie, and her husband, Tommaso Cioni, has not been returned to the family, the Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed as of March 11th. The vehicle is at the auto mechanic right now, where it is still in the custody of the Pima County Sheriff's Department, not the Guthries, and is being worked on by an auto mechanic, allegedly being put back together following an exhaustive search. Put back together. That phrase deserves a moment. When investigators reach the reassembly phase of a vehicle analysis, they are not at the beginning of the process. They are near the end. The interior has been opened up. The panels have been removed. Every layer has been accessed and documented. What you are seeing when a car is being put back together is the final stage of one of the most thorough forensic examinations law enforcement can perform on a vehicle. And yet, even as the reassembly was reportedly underway, the car still had not been returned. Retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer noted that the searches have been consent searches, meaning law enforcement didn't go in with probable cause. They asked, and the family agreed. Now, think carefully about what that means. Coffindaffer explained, if they had probable cause, I could tell you this as an FBI agent. If I have probable cause, I'm not going to get consent. Why would I use consent when I know that in a court of law, it's going to be argued that the person was coerced? This is the distinction that almost no one is discussing. They didn't seize the vehicle with a warrant. They requested it. The family cooperated. And consent searches carry a specific legal meaning. They indicate suspicion that needs to be checked, but not suspicion strong enough to compel. Here is where this case gets truly layered. The sheriff says the family has been cleared of any involvement. That is official. That is on record. And yet the car remained in custody for months after that clearance. Investigators stated they are leaning away from looking at any relatives of Guthrie as suspects. So, if the family is cleared, why does the car matter so much? This is the question that leads to the most important reframe in this entire investigation. What if the data inside that car doesn't incriminate anyone? What if it does the opposite? Modern vehicles are, in a very real sense, rolling data recorders. They log location data. They log timestamps for door events, when doors open, when they close. They record route history, acceleration patterns, stop times. In some systems, they even capture connected phone data and entered destinations. That data cannot be altered retroactively. It does not remember events incorrectly. It does not misremember under pressure. If that car left the Guthrie home at 9:50 p.m. on January 31st and never returned, the car's own data would confirm that. Not through testimony, not through recollection, through recorded fact. And if investigators extracted that data early, it could be the very foundation upon which the family clearance was built. Not just good faith, hard data. But here is the second layer, and this is where it gets crucial. When vehicle data conclusively removes one element from the investigation map, it doesn't just answer the question of who wasn't there. It sharpens the question of who was. It removes one thread from the equation entirely, which means every remaining thread carries more weight. That's why experts say retained evidence is not always about suspicion of the person who provided it. Sometimes it's about the evidence's value as a fixed point, an anchor, in a case with too many moving variables. Now we get to the part that very few people have connected fully. There are 3 specific time points that have surfaced during the review process in this investigation. Not estimates, not approximations, data-driven markers. One comes from system data, indicating possible movement near the area on a date prior to January 31st. One comes from field investigation teams actively searching for recorded images from a specific day before the disappearance. And the third is the night itself. What is striking about all 3 is that they fall on weekends. And they all fall in the window immediately preceding the abduction. Now consider what that pattern suggests to an experienced investigator. If the same general area shows up in surveillance data, movement records, or tip information across multiple separate weekends before the night of the crime, that is not coincidence. That is reconnaissance. That is pattern behavior. That is someone returning to study a location, understand its rhythms, identify its vulnerabilities. Evenings when family members arrive. When lights stay on longer than usual. When a routine plays out, dinner, conversation, games, and then the cars leave one by one. And finally, the last car drives away, and one person remains alone inside. If someone had been watching long enough, that final departure is not a random moment. It is a signal. And the fact that the cameras at the residence were deliberately disabled, multiple cameras at the same time, suggests strongly that whoever did this did not arrive uninformed. Signs of forced entry, smashed security cameras, and blood traces confirmed as Nancy's were found inside and outside the residence. Multiple cameras, plural. Smashed. That requires knowledge of where those cameras were located. And that kind of knowledge is not typically obtained in a single visit. As of today, Nancy Guthrie has not been located, and the investigation remains ongoing. Savannah Guthrie has since returned to today, but producers have reportedly implemented strict procedures for dealing with any news that might break during the program. The investigation is now in its 3rd month. Since then, investigators have not identified a suspect or provided details about any significant breakthroughs in the case. Savannah Guthrie posted a video announcing the family's $1 million reward for information that leads to Nancy Guthrie's recovery, acknowledging that while the family still believes in a miracle, they also know she may already be gone. As of April 13, 2026, Nancy Guthrie is still officially missing, and her status as dead or alive has not been confirmed. And just this week, a new forensic development has emerged. Genetic genealogist CeCe Moore has suggested that a bite flashlight seen in surveillance footage could carry trace DNA from the suspect, potentially offering a crucial lead in a case that has remained unresolved since February 2026. Forensic experts say the object could hold saliva or skin cells, which may preserve usable DNA even after weeks. Meanwhile, on the motive front, Dr. Burgess, a psychiatric nurse and researcher who worked with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit to profile serial killers, told News Nation's Brian Entin that Nancy Guthrie may not have been the actual target, raising the possibility that the abduction was retribution directed at Savannah Guthrie herself. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos said investigators believe they know the motive for the crime, but he did not elaborate, citing the integrity of the investigation. They know the motive. They're not saying what it is. And the investigation continues. Let's bring it all back together. One car, a blue Honda CR-V, taken with consent, held for over 2 months, being reassembled at a garage still under police custody. In a case where the family has been cleared, but the evidence has not yet been fully released. The car is not the answer to this case, but it may be something more valuable than an answer. It may be a boundary. Evidence that definitively establishes what did not happen in a specific window of time, because in investigations where the timeline is contested and the circumstances are murky, the value of a fixed point cannot be overstated. Remove one suspect from a map with certainty, and the map becomes clearer. The real target comes into sharper focus. Retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Jason Pack put it this way: they have data, mountains of it. Names have surfaced and been evaluated. Some have been cleared. Others may still be in play in ways we aren't seeing publicly. This case did not begin on January 31st. It may have been set in motion weeks before by someone who understood the routines, mapped the vulnerabilities, disabled the cameras, and then waited for exactly the right moment. Nancy Guthrie is still out there. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has said it will continue until she is located or all leads have been exhausted. If you have any information, call 1-800-CALL. FBI or visit tips.fbi.gov. Where are you following this case from? Drop it in the comments. This community stretches across cities and countries, and staying connected matters. Like this video and subscribe if you want to follow every update as it develops. Because in a case with this many layers, the next detail could be the one that changes everything.